When we choose silence in the face of wrong, we are not merely passive observers, we are complicit. Silence is agreement. It is a quiet nod that allows the unacceptable to persist, thrive, and even grow stronger. Many of us believe that by staying silent, we are avoiding conflict, maintaining peace, or being respectful, but in reality, our silence sends a message. It communicates to the world, and especially to those watching us, that we approve of what is happening. Imagine witnessing someone being mistreated, maybe at work, in your family, or in your community. You see it, you know it's wrong, but you choose not to speak up. You rationalize your silence by telling yourself, it's none of my business, or I don't want to make things worse. Yet in that moment of inaction, your silence becomes a shield for the perpetrator and a weapon against the victim. This principle is true not only in obvious injustices, but also in everyday life. In relationships, silence can send a message that you are fine with things as they are, even if they are not. A spouse might feel neglected, a friend might be slipping into destructive behavior, or a colleague might be making decisions that lead to failure. If you see these things and say nothing, your silence becomes consent. It is as though you are standing on the sidelines, cheering them on with your quiet approval. God's word is clear about the responsibility we have to speak up. Proverbs 31:8-9 commands us to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy. This scripture is a direct call to action. When we stay silent, we are not fulfilling the mandate God has given us to advocate for justice and truth. Silence in this context is not only agreement, but also disobedience. The fear of confrontation often paralyzes us. We think, what if I lose this relationship? What if people judge me? What if I don't say it the right way? These questions are valid, but they should not be excuses. The discomfort of confrontation pales in comparison to the damage caused by silence. When you remain quiet, you rob others of the opportunity to grow, to change, or to find freedom. Silence can allow toxic behaviors to take root, harmful patterns to persist, and truth to be buried. Let me remind you of an important truth: your voice matters. God has placed you in specific relationships, families, workplaces, and communities for a purpose. You are not there by accident. You are a steward of influence, and with that influence comes the responsibility to use your voice for good. Silence, when you have the ability to speak, is a misuse of that responsibility. It is choosing comfort over calling. It's also worth noting that silence does not protect you. Many times people stay silent because they think it will keep them safe from backlash or involvement in uncomfortable situations. But silence has a way of turning into regret. When the consequences of inaction manifest, when a friend's life spirals out of control, when an injustice becomes too great to ignore, or when you realize you could have made a difference, you are left to wrestle with the pain of what you didn't do. Regret is a heavy burden, and it is avoidable if you have the courage to speak when it matters. Speaking up does not mean being reckless or harsh. It means being intentional, loving, and truthful. It requires wisdom to choose the right words and the right timing. But no matter how challenging it may be, choosing to speak is always better than remaining silent in the face of wrong. Your voice has the power to challenge systems, transform lives, and stand as a beacon of truth in a world that desperately needs it. So the next time you face a situation where you are tempted to stay silent, ask yourself, what message is my silence sending? If it aligns with agreement to something you know is wrong, then it's time to find your voice. The world doesn't need more silent observers, it needs courageous truth tellers. Silence is agreement, but your words can bring change. Use them. When we withhold our words, we withhold the truth, and in doing so, we keep others in darkness. Truth is powerful. It is the light that reveals reality, corrects misconceptions, and sets people free. Silence, on the other hand, is a barrier that hides the truth from those who need it most. While we may convince ourselves that staying silent is the more comfortable or polite option, the truth remains that silence does more harm than good when truth is needed. Imagine a person lost in a dark room, stumbling and struggling to find their way out. You stand outside the door with a light in your hand, knowing that a single word from you could guide them to safety. Yet you remain silent. What happens? That person continues to struggle, and their suffering is prolonged, not because they were incapable of finding a solution, but because you chose not to illuminate their path. This is what silence does. It denies others the clarity they need to navigate their lives. The Bible emphasizes the liberating power of truth. John 8:32 declares, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. If truth has the power to liberate, then silence has the potential to imprison. There are people in your life right now who are bound by lies, misconceptions, or ignorance, and your silence is allowing their chains to remain intact. Whether it's a friend making harmful decisions, a colleague misinterpreting your intentions, or a family member clinging to false beliefs, your unwillingness to speak the truth leaves them trapped in a reality that could be changed. One of the reasons we hide the truth through silence is fear. We fear rejection, conflict, or being misunderstood. But when we allow fear to dictate our silence, we place our comfort above someone else's well-being. Fear should never be a reason to withhold truth, because the cost of silence is often greater than the temporary discomfort of speaking up. By staying silent, we prioritize our own ease over the opportunity to help others grow, heal, or find clarity. Silence also hides the truth in relationships, creating unnecessary distance and misunderstanding. When we fail to express our thoughts, feelings, or concerns, we leave others guessing about where they stand. This guessing game can lead to resentment, mistrust, and ultimately fractured connections. For example, if you feel hurt by a friend's actions but choose not to address it, they remain unaware of the impact of their behavior. Over time, the unresolved issue festers and the relationship suffers, not because of the original offense, but because the truth was hidden. In the workplace, silence can hinder progress and perpetuate problems. Consider a scenario where a team member is consistently making errors that affect the group's productivity. You notice it, but instead of addressing the issue, you stay quiet, assuming someone else will handle it. Your silence allows the mistakes to continue, causing frustration among the team and diminishing the overall effectiveness of the group. Speaking the truth in such situations, even if uncomfortable, is essential for growth and success. Hiding the truth also impacts our spiritual lives. As followers of Christ, we are called to be bearers of truth. Ephesians 4:15 instructs us to speak the truth in love so that we may grow together in Christ. When we choose silence, we neglect our responsibility to share the truth that God has revealed to us. Whether it's sharing the gospel with someone who has never heard it or offering guidance to a fellow believer, our silence can prevent others from experiencing the transformative power of God's truth. The key to overcoming the temptation to remain silent is love. When we truly care about someone, we speak the truth, not to hurt or judge, but to help and uplift. Speaking truth requires wisdom, humility, and a heart focused on the well-being of others. It's not about being blunt or harsh. It's about delivering the message in a way that is kind, clear, and constructive. Silence hides the truth, but love compels us to reveal it. In every situation, ask yourself, who benefits from my silence? If the answer is no one, then it's time to find your voice. The truth you hold could be the very thing someone needs to change their life. Don't let fear or complacency keep you from speaking up. Your words have the power to bring clarity, healing, and freedom. Use them wisely and never underestimate the impact of revealing the truth. Silence can be a heavy burden, particularly when it stands in the way of healing. Whether it is within a family, a friendship, or even your own personal life, the decision to withhold your words can delay the process of restoration and recovery. Healing often begins with communication, but when silence takes its place, pain lingers, wounds deepen, and opportunities for growth are lost. Imagine someone in your life struggling with a hidden burden, a mistake they made, a wound from their past, or even a habit that is slowly consuming them. You see their pain, but for some reason you choose not to speak. Perhaps you are afraid of offending them, or you tell yourself, it's not my place to get involved. Meanwhile, they continue to suffer because the words they need, the encouragement, the truth, the correction remain locked inside you. Your silence, though unintentional, contributes to their prolonged hurt. Healing requires light, and light comes through truth. When you remain silent, you withhold the truth that can illuminate a path toward restoration. People often live in cycles of brokenness because no one has dared to speak to them about the things that need to change. Your voice could be the very catalyst that helps them see their situation differently, yet your silence keeps them in the dark. Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. This verse reminds us that even difficult truths, when spoken in love, can bring about healing. Your silence, though seemingly kind, might be doing more harm than good. This principle applies not only to correcting others, but also to offering support. Sometimes silence can be misinterpreted as indifference. A loved one going through a tough season might be waiting for a word of encouragement or assurance, and when none comes, they may feel abandoned. They may think if they truly cared, they would say something. What they fail to realize is that your silence is not due to lack of love, but fear of saying the wrong thing. Still, the absence of words can be as damaging as saying the wrong ones. In those moments, even a simple statement like "I see you and I'm here for you" can make all the difference. Another dimension of delayed healing occurs within families. Generational wounds often persist because no one is willing to address them. Parents and children live with misunderstandings, siblings harbor resentment, and spouses drift apart, all because silence has built walls instead of bridges. In such cases, healing begins when someone has the courage to break the silence. A heartfelt apology, an honest acknowledgement of past mistakes, or a declaration of love can open the door to restoration. Without these words, the pain remains unaddressed, festering over time and creating even deeper divides. On a personal level, silence can also delay your own healing. When you refuse to acknowledge your own struggles, whether out of shame or fear, you deny yourself the chance to move forward. You might tell yourself, "If I just ignore this, it will go away." But unspoken pain does not disappear, it grows. Talking to a trusted friend, a counselor, or even bringing your pain to God in prayer can be the first step toward healing. The act of speaking your struggles aloud is powerful. It brings clarity, invites support, and starts the process of releasing what you've been holding inside. Silence, though comfortable in the short term, often creates discomfort in the long term. Healing takes time, but it also takes courage. It requires us to step out of the shadows of fear and into the light of truth. Whether it's addressing someone else's pain or confronting your own, the act of breaking silence is a step toward freedom. Every day you have the opportunity to be a voice of healing in someone's life. Your words can mend relationships, restore hope, and ignite transformation. Do not let fear or hesitation rob someone of the healing they need. Speak in love, speak in truth, and trust that your words, when guided by wisdom and compassion, have the power to heal wounds that silence never could. Regret is a painful emotion, and one of its most common causes is silence. The opportunities we miss to speak up, whether to express love, share truth, or offer help, can linger in our hearts and minds, haunting us with the thought of what could have been. Silence often feels safe in the moment, but as time passes, it becomes a weight we carry, reminding us of the moments we allowed to slip away. The regret of silence is not just about words left unsaid. It is about relationships that could have been strengthened, lives that could have been impacted, and changes that could have been made. Think about the times you've been with loved ones and wanted to say something meaningful, perhaps to apologize, express gratitude, or offer encouragement, but chose not to. You told yourself, "I'll say it later," or "they already know how I feel." But what if later never comes? Life is unpredictable, and the truth is that we don't always get second chances. Many people carry the regret of not telling a parent they loved them, not encouraging a friend when they needed it most, or not sharing wisdom that could have helped someone avoid a mistake. These are missed moments, and the silence in those moments breeds a regret that can last a lifetime. Regret also arises when silence prevents us from standing up for what is right. Perhaps you witnessed someone being treated unfairly but chose to stay quiet because you didn't want to get involved. Or maybe you saw a friend making poor choices and didn't confront them because you feared how they might react. In those instances, silence might feel like the easier path, but over time, it becomes clear that your silence allowed harm to continue unchecked. The regret isn't just about what you didn't say, it's about the impact your silence had or didn't have on the situation. In relationships, silence can create distance that leads to regret. People often assume that their thoughts and feelings are understood without needing to be spoken, but this is rarely the case. A spouse might feel unloved because you didn't express appreciation even though you thought it. A child might feel unsupported because you didn't praise their efforts even though you were proud. Over time, these unspoken words create gaps that can grow into chasms, leaving you looking back and wishing you had spoken sooner. Silence also breeds regret in moments of crisis. Imagine a friend or family member struggling with something they can't articulate, perhaps depression, anxiety, or a difficult life decision. You sense their pain, but you say nothing because you don't know what to say or fear saying the wrong thing. Later, when their situation worsens or they confide in someone else, you are left wondering what difference your words could have made. Regret doesn't come from trying and failing, it comes from not trying at all. The Bible speaks to the power of words, reminding us in Proverbs 18:21 that the tongue has the power of life and death. This verse highlights the tremendous impact our words can have on others. When we choose silence, we deny ourselves the opportunity to bring life into someone else's situation. The regret of that missed opportunity can weigh heavily on our hearts because we know deep down that we could have made a difference. On a personal level, silence can also lead to self-regret. Not advocating for yourself, not asking for help when you need it, or not pursuing your dreams because of fear are all forms of silence that leave you looking back with a sense of loss. The chances you didn't take and the words you didn't speak to yourself, affirmations, encouragement, or even boundaries, become regrets that are often harder to forgive. Regret is a teacher, and it often teaches us that silence is rarely as safe as it seems. While words can sometimes bring conflict or discomfort, they also bring clarity, connection, and the possibility of change. The pain of a difficult conversation fades with time, but the pain of silence lingers because it is tied to the unknown, the what-ifs that will never be answered. Breaking the habit of silence requires courage, but the rewards far outweigh the risks. Speaking up, even when it's hard, allows you to live authentically and create deeper connections with those around you. It's better to say too much than to say too little and wonder what could have been. Don't let silence breed regret in your life. Speak with love, intention, and honesty, and trust that your words will leave a legacy far greater than silence ever could. Silence, though often perceived as harmless, can rob us of our divine purpose. Each of us is born with a unique voice, a combination of our talents, experiences, and perspectives designed to impact the world in ways only we can. When we choose silence over speaking truth, offering encouragement, or addressing issues that matter, we deny not only the purpose for which we were created, but also the opportunity to fulfill our calling. Silence, in this sense, is not just the absence of sound, it is the absence of action, growth, and obedience to the reason we exist. Purpose is tied to communication. From the beginning, God demonstrated this by speaking the world into existence. Words carry creative power, and as beings created in His image, our words also have the ability to create change, inspire growth, and build relationships. When we choose silence, we withhold this power, leaving situations unchanged and people untouched by the light we were meant to bring. Our silence becomes a denial of the responsibility God has entrusted to us to use our voice to make a difference. Consider the parable of the talents in Matthew 25:14-30. In this story, a servant hides his talent out of fear, choosing inaction over risk. The master rebukes him, calling him wicked and lazy because his inaction resulted in no growth or benefit. Similarly, when we choose silence, we are burying the gifts and insights God has given us, whether it's a word of encouragement, a piece of advice, or a difficult truth. Withholding what we've been entrusted to share is equivalent to hiding our purpose in fear. Fear is often the root of silence. We worry about rejection, criticism, or saying the wrong thing, so we convince ourselves that staying quiet is safer. However, purpose is rarely found in comfort zones. It is found in stepping out, speaking up, and trusting that even imperfect words spoken with sincerity and love can fulfill their intended purpose. The Apostle Paul reminds us in 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." This verse challenges us to overcome the fear that keeps us silent and embrace the courage required to walk in our purpose. Silence also denies purpose because it withholds solutions from those who need them. Every person's life is interconnected, and the purpose of your voice may be to help someone else fulfill theirs. Imagine a mentor who never speaks up to guide a younger person, or a friend who remains silent while another struggles with a challenge you've already overcome. Your voice might hold the key to someone else's breakthrough, yet your silence denies them access to it. By speaking, you activate not only your purpose, but also theirs. In families, silence can deny purpose by allowing dysfunction to persist. Unaddressed issues, whether they are misunderstandings, unspoken expectations, or unresolved pain, can stifle growth and prevent relationships from thriving. Speaking up with honesty and vulnerability, even when it's uncomfortable, can break cycles of dysfunction and create an environment where purpose can flourish. A family's ability to fulfill its collective purpose often depends on its willingness to confront silence with communication. On a broader scale, silence in the face of injustice denies our purpose as agents of change. Whether it's standing up against discrimination, advocating for the vulnerable, or speaking truth to power, our voices are tools for shaping the world around us. When we remain silent, we allow wrongs to go unchallenged and deny the impact we were meant to have. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." This powerful statement reminds us that silence is not neutral, it is an active choice to withhold our contribution to the world's healing and progress. Lastly, silence denies personal growth. Speaking up, even in small ways, refines our character and builds our confidence. Each time we use our voice, we step closer to understanding and living out our purpose. Silence, on the other hand, keeps us stagnant. It allows fear, doubt, and complacency to take root, robbing us of the fulfillment that comes from walking boldly in our calling. Breaking the habit of silence requires intentionality. It means recognizing that your voice has value and that your words, even when they feel small or imperfect, have the power to fulfill your purpose. Purpose is not found in hiding or hesitating, it is found in action, in speaking truth, and in trusting that God can use your voice for His glory. So speak up, speak often, and speak with the confidence that your words carry the potential to transform lives, including your own. Relationships are built on communication, the bridge that connects hearts, minds, and souls. When silence takes the place of honest dialogue, that bridge begins to crumble. Silence, though seemingly passive, is a force that can quietly but effectively erode even the strongest of bonds. It creates distance, breeds misunderstanding, and fosters resentment, ultimately killing relationships that might otherwise have thrived. At the core of every relationship, whether between friends, family members, or romantic partners, is the need for connection. Connection is nurtured through words of love, affirmation, correction, and understanding. Silence interrupts this flow, leaving gaps where words should be. These gaps may start small, but over time they widen, creating an emotional chasm that can feel impossible to bridge. When you stop speaking, sharing, and engaging, the relationship begins to suffocate under the weight of unspoken emotions and unmet needs. Silence often stems from fear or avoidance. You might choose not to address an issue because you fear conflict, rejection, or hurting the other person. While this silence may seem like a temporary solution, it usually does more harm than good. Avoiding difficult conversations doesn't make the problem go away, it simply buries it beneath layers of unspoken tension. Over time, these buried issues resurface, often in ways that are more damaging than if they had been addressed early on. The silent treatment, in particular, is one of the most toxic forms of communication avoidance. It leaves the other person feeling dismissed, unvalued, and disconnected, slowly eroding trust and intimacy. Another way silence kills relationships is by fostering assumptions. When you don't express your thoughts, feelings, or concerns, the other person is left to guess what you're thinking. These guesses are rarely accurate and often lean toward the negative. A friend might assume you're angry with them because you've stopped reaching out, when in reality you've been preoccupied. A spouse might interpret your quietness as disinterest or indifference, even if you're simply overwhelmed. Over time, these misinterpretations build walls of misunderstanding that can be difficult to dismantle. Silence also stifles growth. Healthy relationships require the exchange of ideas, feedback, and even constructive criticism. Without these elements, relationships become stagnant. For example, a parent who remains silent about their child's behavior misses an opportunity to guide them toward better choices. Similarly, a friend who doesn't speak up about feeling hurt by something you said or did denies both of you the chance to address the issue and grow stronger as a result. Growth often requires uncomfortable conversations, but these conversations pave the way for deeper understanding and stronger bonds. In romantic relationships, silence can be particularly devastating. A lack of communication creates emotional distance, making partners feel isolated even when they are physically together. Unexpressed feelings of love, gratitude, or concern can leave one partner feeling unappreciated or unseen. Over time, this emotional void can lead to resentment, bitterness, and eventually the breakdown of the relationship. The tragedy is that many of these breakdowns could be avoided if both partners were willing to speak honestly and vulnerably with each other. Silence in relationships is not always about withholding words, it can also be about failing to listen. When one person speaks but the other does not respond meaningfully, whether out of distraction, disinterest, or discomfort, it creates a one-sided dynamic that leaves the speaker feeling unheard and unsupported. True communication is a two-way street, requiring both speaking and active listening. When either is absent, the relationship suffers. Even in moments of conflict, silence can be more damaging than disagreement. Disagreements, when handled with respect and a willingness to understand each other, can strengthen relationships. Silence, on the other hand, shuts the door to resolution. It leaves wounds open and questions unanswered, allowing small problems to grow into larger ones. Conflict resolution requires dialogue, and without it, relationships become stuck in a cycle of unresolved issues and growing tension. The Bible offers wisdom on the importance of communication in relationships. Proverbs 18:21 reminds us the tongue has the power of life and death. This means our words can build up or tear down relationships, but silence can be just as destructive as harmful words. By refusing to speak, we deny the relationship the chance to heal, grow, and thrive. Breaking the pattern of silence in relationships requires courage and intentionality. It means choosing to have the hard conversations even when they are uncomfortable. It means expressing love and appreciation openly even when it feels vulnerable. It means listening attentively even when you don't fully understand. Relationships thrive on communication, and without it, they wither. Ultimately, silence kills relationships because it denies the very connection that sustains them. To preserve and strengthen your bonds, make the choice to speak, listen, and engage. Communication is the lifeline of every relationship. Use it wisely and you will see your relationships flourish.